Happy Monday. Today is Monday. What day is it today? Today is Monday, January the 18th, 2021. It's also Martin Luther King Jr. Day as far as being observed. His birthday was actually on Friday. But today is when we observe Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So get out and if there's something you can participate in it. There's not a whole lot being offered right now because of COVID, but do what you can. At least just be a good Christian person. That goes a long way. Anyway, so today I want to talk about our daily Bible readings, which I forgot to tell you are from Psalm 86, 1 Samuel 9:27 through chapter 10, verse 8, and then 2 Corinthians 6:14 through chapter 7, verse 1. And I'm going to look at 2 Corinthians, talk about this idea of being unevenly yoked, this idea of being in partnership, and who you're in partnership with as a Christian. So, you probably, if you've heard this text, for instance, verse 14 says, "Do not be mismatched with unbelievers," right? I think my whole life I've heard people talk about this in terms of, like dating advice, right? And you've probably heard that too. You don't date unbelievers. Don't date non-believers. Don't marry somebody who's non-believer. And okay, yeah. I can kind of see that. That's generally how this has been taken, although I don't really think that's what Paul is specifically talking about. Generally, I can see how that fits in. Even Wesley deals with that and cites this text in a conversation with that. He's got a letter where he's responding to somebody who asked him for advice, marriage advice, right? This is, I think, a young woman who has been proposed to, but she's concerned because she knows her Bible. She knows this text. And she knows that the person she's been proposed to by, and Wesley kind of alludes to the fact that, she's got her parents' permission and everything, but she's hesitant because the language is, he's a God-fearer. In other words, he fears God, he believes in God, he wants to be a good person and everything, but he's not necessarily what we would call a Christ follower, right? He hasn't really come to that full understanding. He hasn't really come to a full faith in Christ. And hasn't allowed that to shape his life and who he is, and so she's concerned, like, well, should I say no to this guy? And Wesley's advice is interesting. He's like, I don't think that's a problem. He may not be all the way there yet, but as long as he's not, a complete pagan, a complete, unbeliever, you're in a good position. And he says, you're in a position to actually be a witness and a testimony to this person. So, interesting little insight from Wesley. But like I said, I don't think that's really the whole point of this text. Paul goes on to ask, he says, what fellowship, do we have with these people? And he's talking about Christians who, seeking fellowship with people and ideas that, look churchy, but at the end of the day, they really only seek power, and they kind of promulgate strife through their words and their deeds. That's the problem that Paul's talking about. And he's talking about people who are, I think, flat out unbelievers, but then also people that and ideas and thoughts that, like I said, look churchy on the outside, and they might use all the language, and they might stand up and even pray to Jesus. But at the same time, they're really not promoting the gospel. And there may be some of those people that at the end of the day, Christ is going to say, you say my name, but I don't know who you are. You have no portion in me. So, Paul then goes on to ask, what fellowship is there between light and darkness? What partnership is there between righteousness and lawlessness? So, you can have these people that you think are good, but if the only thing that they're putting forth is, darkness and lawlessness, and on the one hand, you know what the testimony of Christ is about, and you know what the witness of faith is about, and you don't see much light or righteousness coming out of that camp, you should probably question whether or not you should have a partnership with them at all, whether or not you should support that, whether or not you should participate in that. He goes on to say, what agreement does Christ have with Beliar, or Belial is another way you might say that. And that's an interesting thing. It's a word that shows up throughout the Bible. By Paul's time, it is kind of a personification that represents just like chaos and paganism, and complete anti-Christ-like behavior, things that don't have anything to do with the kind of person Christ is and the kind of person he calls us to be. If somebody professes Christ, but all they're ever doing is spreading chaos and hate and frustration and confusion and darkness and unrighteousness, you should probably question whether or not you should participate in that and whether or not you should have any partnership with them at all. Don't be unevenly yoked. Don't profess Christ and then follow after what in essence is very dark paganism. So anyway, that's the DBR for today. We'll be back tomorrow with another installment. Go out and you have a good day. Boop.